All right, Allie, we'll jump to you.
Hi, Tad. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Okay, perfect. Yeah, I was here last month and working on my niche, and I've worked on it a bit, which raised more questions, of course. So I wanted to share. I've been looking through the lens of the sort of like the big circle, three little circles exercise that you have. And it sort of revealed, I think, one of the reasons why I keep getting confused about niche, because I've realized that there's three sort of stages that folks can come to me around. And I'm a mediator, I do conflict resolution work, but I turn it inward on people. So instead of them trying to get what they want out of life by getting the other person to change, it's let's look inward. And it's focused around helping people use their value systems to do that. So the three little circles have ended up being people come in focused on the external conflict. And then sort of like, I guess I would say the level up is then they're focused on the internal conflict. And then the third one is they're focused more on a spiritual conflict piece. So how they connect to the rest of, existence. And so depending on where they fit in that phase, it really is, I'm noticing, affecting what I'm branding, what language I'm using, and the questions I'm trying to answer are changing depending on these three. And so I've sort of gotten to this place where I'm thinking, am I biting off more than I can chew by including all of these three? But also they all feel super necessary. Not only because I kind of think that even if you start at level one, hopefully eventually you'll move along to level two and level three, phase one, phase two, phase three. But also I think each of us moves as individuals. We might pop back to phase one when we're with our our relatives or whatever, and then pop over to phase three when we feel more safe or whatever. So I'm wondering, how can I continue to niche down and get as specific as I can, still being mindful of the three phases that people can come to me in?
Okay, that's a great question. So for everyone, one of the things that's being lifted up here is sometimes people think they've got three different niches, but what they actually have is the same, or three target markets, but they have the same target market at three different stages. So for myself, there's multiple stages I might meet people at. Stage one might be just, oh God, marketing feels gross, I don't want to do it. But then people say, no, okay, I see the marketing can feel good, but I'm realizing one of the reasons I struggle is I don't have my niche figured out. And then some people say, no, I got my niche figured out, but I'm really this point of view piece. And then other people say, no, I got the niche and the point of view, but I'm realizing I've got no structure to my business, or I don't know how to find people. So you can see what I'm saying. That's all the same person, but they're at different stages of their development as an entrepreneur. And we have a similar thing in this case. The wrinkle here is, I think it's hard to list all three, because on my website, I could do that. I could have, hey, are you struggling with this, or this? And people click on the one that's relevant and go in at that point, and there's a, sales letter for them. But in this one, to me, the wrinkle is that it's kind of, oh, are you not that spiritually hip? Okay, I guess you can go to remedial level. Oh, you don't get that this is really a spiritual thing? Sure, let's make it about the other person. And so that, I don't know how to frame it. That wouldn't be that. Though there may be a way to do it. But I just see that as a bit of a hurdle or a peccadillo in this one. But some questions come to mind. Number one, what percentage of your clients are at which level right now?
Yeah, I think I'm noticing that the majority of actually the men that come to us are in the external conflict stage, sort of just dipping their toe in the internal conflict stage. And then that's maybe, it's actually pretty close to half. And then the the women have been seeking and seeking, and they're just looking internally constantly, and they have more of that people pleasing part of them, and they're blaming themselves for everything, and they are dipping their toes in more of the spiritual conflict piece. And yeah, that's about half. We don't have a lot of folks who are like deeply embedded in this spiritual conflict piece, because there's a lot for that, right? Like when you're like, I know I want the spiritual path, there's a ton of resources for that. And we don't do a ton of branding, at least right now. I'm saying we, because I have a business partner. We don't do a ton of branding right now, letting people know that there's a spiritual element to what we do.
Okay, so that's the first question. Good to know. Second question is, let's just say that you knew on 2 of these, there was somebody else you could refer to who just nails it. And you're like, man, we'll never be as good as them. They're so good at that. They can totally handle that one. And you only had one of them. Is there one that you would, it's like, oh, if those other 2 are really handled and there's somebody I can send people to, then I'd rather do this one. Is there one that you're most drawn to?
I think we are, yeah, the conflict resolution piece, the external conflict piece it's not new. There's training that we would refer to people to. The internal piece is more, like the middle piece is more new. And yeah, I guess where I jump to there is people are more excited about the external stuff. It feels like that's our pathway in to brand, to be like, yeah, if you want to help to improve your relationship with your kid or with your coworker, yada yada, come in and we'll help with that. And then they get in and we're like, surprise, you need to work on yourself first. So yeah, I think we started really firmly in the internal conflict piece, and then we realized, oh, people don't really get their role in this. They don't get that they need to work on themselves to improve their external world. So we need to hit phase 1 a bit harder. So although there's a ton of training for that, yeah, I worry that people wouldn't know to come to us.
Okay, so there's a couple possibilities that occur to me. One is you could just focus on the spiritual side and say, you know what, we just want to work with people who already get the spiritual piece, and that's it, and the rest of the stuff we'll refer out to, or we might do some courses additionally, but the messaging is going to be, you're in a conflict and you understand that it's a spiritual, problem that requires a spiritual solution, etc. And the key thing there, and also even for this other option I'll give in a second, is to really define what you mean by spiritual. That can be helpful just for everyone, because I see this word get used a lot. Oh, I like working with spiritual people. What do you mean? Do you mean fundamentalist Christian? Do you mean Buddhist? Do you mean, and I'm not being tongue-in-cheek about this either, I really mean it. Is it New Age? Is it indigenous? And what kind of indigenous are we talking? There's such a diversity of spirituality. And it's easy to assume that we all mean the same thing and that we have the same understandings of what we mean by, there's a kind of spirituality that says this whole world is literally a computer simulation that we're trapped in. That's a spiritual understanding. There's a spiritual understanding that says, no, this world is real and tangible, and this is the only thing there is, and you die and that's it. But that's a spiritual animist kind of, and then there's animists that say, no, life is eternal as well. So it's good to be sort of clear about what the bedrocks are for your approach to spirituality, because they're not all compatible, is the bottom line. Okay, but so that's one possibility, is you just focus on the spiritual side, and because, okay, we're really into this. But it strikes me the other one is, I hear that for those first 2, the inner and the outer, it's almost like a yin yang. I don't see this as a sequence of 1, 2, 3. I see it more as like you've got a yin yang thing up here, and then maybe almost a circle around it as the spiritual side of it. And it sounds like, to generalize, the men are coming saying it's the other person's fault. The women are coming saying it's my fault. And on both sides, maybe there's an imbalance. Like the women could actually stand maybe to see, oh, there's this other person's a son of a bitch, and it's not all you. And you could, take some of that off your shoulders, and maybe the men, generally. So So what you could do is you could be leading with just, hey, you're in a conflict and you can't seem to resolve it and it's very painful, broad strokes. But then very quickly you can get into your point of view and you could just educate people about it. You could say, look, here's our opinion about conflict. There's sort of two traps people get into. One is too much blaming the other person, the other party, and the other is too much blaming themselves. So the very first thing we need to do in the work is to balance that out. Help you figure out what you're responsible for, what you're not responsible for. But also we work from a spiritual perspective. Our belief is that conflict is spiritual in these ways. And if you work with us, just to know that's part of how we see it. It's not, and we also don't push it. We have to get there, but this is where we're coming from in it. And this is, we think this is one of the missing pieces in a lot of conflict resolution. Once you've got the responsibilities properly balanced, to contextualize it in something more sacred and something larger. And this is sort of how we see it. And do you have anything written out about your spiritual beliefs about conflict anywhere?
No, it's new enough that we're just sort of dipping a toe into how we want to message that.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I would just say that's some behind the scenes backstage homework. It's like, what are your top 10 beliefs about the relationship between spirituality and conflict? Because I almost see it's like in the center of this image, you've got the conflict. Then around it, there's almost like the yin yang, or like two halves of a circle. One is one way, one's the other way. And then that's surrounded by the spiritual context. And it's like, we have to start with the issue. What's the conflict? And then we balance these two. And then, we're working to hold it in this bigger context. So it could be that they're not three different target markets. They're three different aspects of your point of view and your approach to resolving conflict.
And do you think that really getting clear about that for folks is enough? Or do you think we need to drill down further and get specific for people about the specific issues around conflict that they're facing? We were trying to get specific about like what is the actual, like what type of, as soon as we get into what type of conflict are you talking about, like let's describe the symptom, it just explodes into all of these different.
Right. Are we talking divorce? Are we talking breakups? Are we talking landlord tenant stuff? Yeah.
And if we're talking about internally what's happening, we're honing in on people tend to be indecisive, they tend to feel disconnected, they tend to have a lack of purpose.
Okay, I got it.
Things we're seeing.
Yeah, well, I think you could have that on a homepage or on a sales page. Is like when people are more focused on the outside, here's the symptoms. When people are more focused on the inside, here's the symptoms. So the first thing we just got to do is figure out where we're at, and come to some appropriate balance. Because my guess is you also probably wouldn't want to work with somebody who's like, no, it's all the other person, and I have no openness to even considering that I have responsibility. That's probably not a good fit for you anyways. But yeah, so you could list, here's all the conflicts, but it's not that compelling. You could pick one. You could say, we just work on divorce and that's it. We do a conscious divorce thing or a conscious co-parenting thing. You could pick a very specific thing. But another way to do it is to just also talk about what is their relationship sort of to the conflict in broader terms. Just like you just feel stuck, you feel stymied, you just are feeling hopeless about it. And you can't see a path forward. You can speak about it in those terms of how do they feel about it, how do they relate to it.
Okay. Right, which is more the like you're like feeling indecisive, you're not grounding in, like you don't have a sense of where your place is in all of this, that sort of thing.
Yeah, or you feel powerless, you feel I would just look at what are the symptoms that are in common, whether or not they're blaming others or blaming themselves. And that's the headline, is you speak to what's the thing both of them share, speak to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.